G'day, my name's Reed Goossens and you're listening to the Passive Investor Podcast.
The views and opinions provided on this show are for informational purposes only and should not be misinterpreted as an offer to buy or sell any securities or to make or consider any investment or course of action. For more information, please go to passiveinvestorshow.com.
And now, the Passive Investor Show. Here's your host, John Fortes.
Welcome, PI listeners, to the Passive Investor Show. I'm the Passive Investor Consultant, John Fortes, your host of the only ranked podcast for passive investors in multifamily syndications and real estate funds. Our goal and purpose of this show is to be a resource to investors and help them master their passive investments by beating inflation 1% at a time. My guest today, I have the pleasure of bringing on Reed Goossens, CEO and co-founder of Wildhorn Capital. Only 8 years ago in 2012, Reed quit his job in Australia and moved halfway across the world to chase a goal. He moved to the US without a job. He had no established network and no family members for support. He backed himself and took a leap of faith. With limited funds, Reed purchased his first property, all cash, for $38,000 in late 2012. Since then, Reed has co-founded Wildhorn Capital and now controls over $250 million worth of U.S. commercial real estate. And he has achieved financial freedom in the process. Reed, welcome to the show and tell us a little bit about your background.
Thanks, mate, for having me. Well, what that introduction's pretty good.
It is. I know we can dive in a little bit more.
Yeah, I think the big thing that probably in that introduction you don't realize, I moved out to the United States to just be an expat. You know, I wanted to move out here, my background's in structural engineering, so I came out here to New York City, and I was chasing the love of two things. I really love New York City, but I also chased the love of my then girlfriend, now wife, who's American. So really moving to this country was really just to tick a box, live in a foreign country for a period of time, and then move back to Australia. I had no idea when I first got here that I would be, 8 years later talking to you on a podcast about, building portfolios and brands and all that good stuff. And it's been an incredible journey, and I've been loving every single minute of it. So yeah.
I love that. And obviously you built up a business, but when in your career did you start taking on passive investors?
Well, the passive investor first deal I ever took on was actually my third deal. And this was a flip project in Philadelphia. And I took on some money from my dad, actually. And it went okay. It didn't go great. I ended up losing some money myself, but I made sure my dad was made whole, and I promised him a return, and I gave him that return. Flipping, I won't get into the trials and tribulations of it, but it was an issue, but we ended up getting through the project, and the ultimate thing came that time was an issue, and it went from a 6-month flip to a 18-month flip, and that's really where you start losing money. So, but I made sure there was a first experience that I made sure that I dipped into my own pocket and made my investor whole first and foremost, but also promised them a return, and I gave them that return. It happened to me with my dad, obviously, but it's those lessons you learn early on in your career that not everything's going to go 100% according to plan. And when it doesn't, you need to be big enough and ugly enough to say, okay, stuff's gone wrong, and I'm willing to dip into my own pocket to make sure my investors are all good, and there's no ill feeling towards one another. So yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome. It's pretty exciting how, well, it's not exciting that you lost money, but you got the experience on it. So, it cost you something to gain that experience. It did. Fortunately, you were able to make your dad whole. So
yeah, and then some, right? So
absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you got him those returns. Reed, what is the criteria you're looking for in passive investors? Because on the show, we are told over and over, vet the sponsor, but at the same time, we vet the sponsor. What is the criteria you're looking for in passive investors?
Yeah, I think it depends on I'm an operator, obviously. So it depends on where you are in your career as an operator. And the thing is, as in early stage operations, you're going to probably bring on sophisticated investors, friends and family, people in your direct sphere. And that's where, those people may not know exactly what real estate apartment investing is. And it's your job as a sponsor to make sure you're educating them first and foremost on what you do and about the risks involved and trying to bring them up to some sort of level of sophistication. As you grow and you build your database, you pivot away from those sophisticated investors and you go more towards accredited investors. And that's really important for us these days because we want to make sure we have that established relationship with those accredited investors, but also being accredited knows that you're of some level of sophistication and caliber in terms of in the eyes of the government to be qualified to invest in this deal. And that doesn't mean I have to hold your hand all the time, particularly when you have up 150, 200 investors in any one deal. So for that, it's really important to make sure that it's a two-way street. The investor's got to, as you say, you got to vet the sponsor, but we have to vet the investor to make sure it's a right fit. And there's been times where we haven't allowed certain people to come into the deal just because of one personality or two that they're just maybe not necessarily quite ready to take on an apartment investment deal because they're just not experienced enough. And you need to, spend some more time learning, maybe just sit on the sidelines and watch us, watch how we communicate to our investors because you'll be on the emails, the monthly emails. And then as you get more experience and more comfort with us, then maybe you can invest in another deal. So we have had those hard conversations with people in the past just to say, maybe this is not the right deal for you at this point in time. So yeah.
It's terrible when you have to turn away investors, but at the same time, it has to work and it has to be a two-way street, like you said.
Exactly.
Can you walk us through your onboarding process? What's that look like for new
investors? Yeah, sure. So typically, I do a lot of podcasting and outreach, and I've got my own podcast, my own books, and all that sort of stuff. My business partner Andrew does the same sort of thing. And people will hear about our story and hear about who we are, and they get intrigued. And they'll come up and, hey, I'm so and so. Or then they send us an email, say, hey, how's it going? I'm so and so. We make an introduction, and through that introduction, we have sort of a bit of a we got to get on a phone call, maybe a couple of phone calls. We'll send them some past deals just to have a look at and see what the types of deals we look at and our investment thesis, because that's the most important thing that people have got to align on. What is our investment thesis? And for us, it's a medium to long-term hold in value add multifamily in, class B plus and A locations in Central Texas. So not every investor is going to want to do that, right? They might be focused on the Northeast, or they might be focused in Florida, or they might be focused in Seattle. So for us, it's got to align in terms of the investor's wants and needs. And once we establish that, we can put them into our database. And when we have a live deal, they'll get pinged and say, hey, we've got this deal. It's good. It seems to align with what you want to do. If you're interested, please respond. And so they will respond to us. And at that point, we know that we might have blasted out our email campaign, but the fact is they've already been, one, pre-vetted, but two, we then know the interest coming back and we can start recording that interest. And it's not till then we send them the summary of the email. And this is not a security that we're sending. We're sending literally a summary of the deal. And they will, start to look at the high level numbers and start to see the pro forma and the pictures of the deal and where it's located. And from that, we'll have an investor, a couple of weeks later, an investor webinar where people can jump on and hear a little bit more about what the deal has to offer, hear from myself, hear from my business partner, and hear from other, maybe it's our property management team or some other team members that we have brought on board in order to, show and answer questions in and around the particular deal. From that point, it's only then, if you're interested, you would then email us again, say, hey, I really like the presentation. I really like the investment deck you sent me. I'm interested to learn more and potentially sign up as an investor and see your PPM. Through that point, it's only then we will allow them to have a secure login to our portal and have access to the PPM and the subscription agreement. So we've probably had 4 or 5 different touch points along the way before they've even seen a security. And at that point, that is when, we answer more questions. There might be a couple of follow-up phone calls, but usually by the time we've got through that process, we've answered a lot of stuff, gone through the underwriting, we've gone through the assumptions, we've gone through the highs and lows, worst case scenarios, best case scenarios. We've gone through potentially any legal issues or that they've had a time to review with their legal team. And then from there, they electronically sign and then they wire their funds, and now they're in the deal, and then we go on to close. So that is the onboarding process in a nutshell. Takes anywhere between 6 to 8 weeks, depending on from the time we've already sent out that first email to the time that someone is onboarded.
I love that you got multiple touch points, creating the intrigue, and along the way, you're just having those conversations and consistent conversations. But also, if you're already onboarded, now it sounds like once you're in the investor portal now, you got access to those deals as they come, and the process is a bit more streamlined than that, right?
It is and it isn't. We want to make sure that when so say we might have an investor who's already in the portal, right? And we have a new deal going out. They would still see there's not like one person sees it before the other people. We may hold it back from certain distribution lists. Like, a particular deal may not suit everyone. We're doing an opportunity zone deal right now, which is completely different, kettle of fish. It's a minimum $250,000 per investor. So it's going to be a completely different bucket of people that we go to. And we have it set up on our CRM to go to those bigger fish compared to the sort of $50,000 investor type of folks. So again, horses for courses. You won't go to everyone for every single deal, and each deal might look and smell a little different. And you have to make sure that your email campaign and your portal is set up in a way that you can check a box and it's only going to certain folks, or you want to, send it to everyone and it goes to everyone. So yeah.
I love that. What is something that you had to implement in your business since you started taking on passive investors?
Well, the one thing, the big thing is the portal. The secure online portal has been a huge tool that we've had to continue to work out and continue to refine. And, I look back at the first deal we did, we were just doing it all through DocuSign and emails and Dropboxes, right? Now it's all online. Everyone is, once you get through the online process, the online login, it's all streamlined, hopefully on the website. And you can electronically sign there, and then you can transfer funds. And then we look at the fund receives on our end, and we then send documents and certificates saying, hey, you've now funded into the deal and you own X% of ownership in this particular deal. So that has probably been the biggest implementation from a passive investor point of view. And then once we close on the deal, it's the ongoing communication that we have with our investors that I'm sure we're going to talk about.
Yeah, I love that. I love the fact that you got a portal, which technology moves us forward and makes things easier for us. And
100%.
Also makes it easy for the passive investor too, because now they get to see everything there instead of just logging at home on their own spreadsheets on what deals they're in and tracking their newsletters.
Exactly.
So yeah, I love that. Reed, what's something you do differently than other sponsors that passive investors benefit from?
Look, I think there's a lot of sponsors out there. I'm not going to sugarcoat that. You can. That's the beauty of where we live in this day and age. You can invest across a lot of different sponsors, and I encourage passive investors to be diversified across many sponsors and many operators. The thing that we do differently is that we are very centrally focused in Austin and San Antonio. We're boots on the ground. We're seeing deals before the market is seeing deals. We're trying to be an expert in that, be an inch wide and a mile deep, but we're also opportunistic in terms of we look at other things in the way we value certain assets. So, the days of putting lipstick on a pig is sort of coming to the end. And we're now starting to look at other different opportunities. I just mentioned opportunity zone deal. We're about to pick up a brand new construction deal. We're actually taking it over pre-construction ending. It's completely different look and feel, right in the path of progress in Austin, Texas. We're also looking at a deal we closed on in March. It's going to be the sort of lipstick on a pig type of scenario. Like, it's a 1980s asset. It's an older asset. But in maybe the next downturn or the next, when the next cycle comes around in terms of construction, there's actually an additional density bonus we can add to that property. Maybe there's an opportunity to completely demolish it and add more units, or sell it to a developer. So there's different ways in which we look at what quote unquote value add, because value add doesn't necessarily mean putting and renovating units. It can be, entitling dirt that you acquire next to the piece of property to add more units. It could be highest and best use in terms of the zoning. It could be in a path of progress where you don't even know, it's got tax exemptions implications that people can benefit on in order to grow their wealth over a long period of time. So looking at the same problem in a different light is really what our benefit is and our strengths are, based on my experience and my business partner's experience.
I love it. Just like passive investors need to diversify, you need to diversify what you're looking into. I love it. I love it. Reed, one piece of advice for PI listeners.
I have to always give it to my dad. He had a piece of advice growing up, and he said, a fool and their money are easily parted. And so don't be a fool with your money. And, what does that mean? It means obviously be educated. And the biggest thing for passive investors as they come in, applaud yourself for the fact that you want to be a passive investor and you're taking control of your financial future and you're using your money wisely, not just giving it to some financial advisor and hoping that they make you money. So good on you for doing that. The full part of it is making sure you understand what you're investing in. You understand the risks. You understand that real estate investing, there is inherent risks with anything. And can you handle those risks moving forward? We're in COVID-19, for crying out loud. No one had any idea, 2 years ago that COVID-19 would be hitting and we're going to have a massive unemployment rate. And, your tenants may have to get up and skip throughout the middle of the night because they can't afford rent if you're investing in low demographic, types of areas. So how does that all play into how you sleep at night? And are you confident that the operator that you're investing in will have your best interest at heart? And I think if you can answer those questions quite well, you won't be the fool and you won't get parted with your money that easily.
I love that, man. I love that. That's pretty unique. I appreciate that. Reed, how can we get in touch with you? And please tell us where your podcast is.
Yeah, podcast is online. It's called Investing in the US. It's been going for about 5 years now. Jump on there to check it out. It's a pretty good show, I must say. I've got 2 books as well. If you check it out on Amazon, 2 best-selling books. It's called 10,000 Miles to the American Dream and Investing in the US, The Ultimate Guide to US Real Estate. But the easiest way to get in touch with me is just jump over to my website at www.reedgoossens.com. That's REEDGOOSSENS. And for a little bit of added bonus to all your listeners, if anyone is coming through LA, that's where I live today. They get back on a flight after COVID and they want to come and say g'day, go out for coffee, go out for beer. You can just shoot me an email, give me a month heads up, and you can shoot me an email at info@reedgoossens.com.
Hey, Reed is very approachable. 2 years ago, he was hosting the Jake and Gino conference, and that's where we met. So Very approachable. Reed, thank you for coming on the show, man. But I got one last question. It's my favorite question. What is the meaning behind your company name?
Wildhorn, the meaning behind Wildhorn, you'll have to actually ask Andrew that because he's a Texan, right? He's a Longhorn, Wildhorn. I think it sort of came out of that sort of Texas. He went to UT. Being the foreigner here, he chose the name and I sort of had to go along with it.
I got it. I respect it. I'm going to have to get Andy on now just to find out.
You have to. But I would definitely recommend, I think it's definitely got to do with the Longhorn-esque UT type of banner. So, yeah.
We're going to get to the bottom of this.
Hey, we should. Tell me what you find out.
All right, I will. Reed, thank you for coming on, man. Really appreciate it.
Hey, man, it's been absolutely fun and you're doing a great job, so keep it up.
Appreciate that. Don't forget to download your free copy of the investment tracker. It allows you to track up to 5 investments, compare sponsors, markets, and most importantly, projected versus actual returns. To get your copy, go to www.projectedreturns.com. PI listeners, thank you for listening. As always, we hope this was the best resource for your investment strategy, but also the best use of your time. Remember, if this episode helps you, you can help us by leaving a review on iTunes. I hope you feel compelled enough to share it with someone you think this would resonate with as well. As much as it pains us to leave you, but you know what time it is. Time to go put this into practice. Till the next time we meet, happy investing. PI listeners, I'm grateful for your time and I appreciate you for listening. It would mean the world to me if you went to iTunes and left a rating and written review. Let me know how you feel about the show. It really makes a big difference with getting the podcast out there. Don't forget about our Facebook group, where all of our guests are members of. I'll be there to answer any of your questions or even questions you might have for future guests. Subscribe so you can get the latest episodes and our fan favorite quick hitters. Finally, I want to keep you updated, so head over to johnfortes.com and sign up for the newsletter. If you're interested in partnering with me, sign up on the contact page so you can talk to me directly. I look forward to connecting with you. Happy investing.